right, we are back. Welcome to another edition of the Stronger Together podcast experience. And it's been a great week as we met educators across the United States. And now today, I'm really excited to welcome in educators from outside of the United States. We have a Canadian educator today that she's going to share some of her journeys about writing, being a ghostwriter, and now being an author, and of course, being an educator as well. So I want to welcome in Lisa Hogan, all the way from north of the border. Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I'm really pumped to be represent north of the border. I'm coming in from the Greater Toronto area in our beautiful province of Ontario.
Oh, wow. So I shared at the start you were an educator at heart, and what is your role in the field?
So I've been an educator in the field for 15 years. I've been everything from I started my journey as an early childhood educator. I've been a classroom teacher. I've been a special education teacher in a variety of really dynamic capacity classrooms. And now I have a very wonderful role where I get to focus in on literacy and support educators on their journey, again, with that focus of reading and writing.
Wow. And so you talk a lot about reading and writing. Have you loved that from the beginning, like as a young kid, or
No. And I
okay?
think that's why I love this journey and the trajectory of where my professional career has taken me, because I wasn't that kid at 3 or 4 years old to pick up a book and sit down and read those babysitter club books. I wanted to, but I loved being outside, and I loved playing sports, and I loved being with friends, and I loved being social. And as I dive deeper into the literacy journey, it's that oral language in the beginning that's really the foundation. So when I felt like I wasn't a reader early on and questioning why am I not as proficient as some of my friends, even in grade 1 or grade 2, I
Hmm.
was still developing my oral language. So sometimes I was quite developed in my oral language in class, and I was moved many times around my classroom because I was quite proficient in my oral language skills. But then I've had some really strong educators who worked with me and really believed in me and had those high expectations. I was also really shy, and
Really?
I
So
would
you said you had a high oral language, but yet you were shy. Tell me about that.
with friends socially.
Okay.
But the moment we got into class, and I loved school so much, but the moment we were in class and we had to go around and read, I would count the lines in our shared reading. We all would have the same book. I'm talking like early 90s. We'd all have the exact same text, and I would count how many kids were in front of me. I would count how many lines down, and I would try to decode and read that one line over and over again. So I actually wasn't paying attention to anything else that was happening. I know I'm not alone on this journey either, because that's kind of a common statement that I hear from other educators. And it was kind of the reason I wanted to always help and support children. And that's where I am
Interesting.
today.
So you say that early 90s, like that was forever ago. That's like when I started teaching. So like, we don't have to tamper of like the emotion of like, oh, back in the early 90s, like
That was the best.
when I was in second grade doing choral reading. I'm like, what is that? It's not like black and white TV time. Like that's when I was starting my teaching profession in 93. So that's okay. We'll let that slide. So speaking of that,
93
so
was a
that's when
great year
so I
too.
went I started going into education when you were still in choral reading groups. So did you always know you wanted to go in that direction?
I did. I did. I always knew I wanted to work with children. I always wanted to be a teacher. If I didn't want to be a teacher, my backup plan was to sing on stage with Mariah one day. So I
Okay,
knew
how'd
that
that work out?
well, I'm going to her Christmas concert in December as it comes in Toronto. So
Okay.
the hope is still there. But I've always loved working with children. I really appreciate building connections and inspiring people. And when I was in grade 6, I would volunteer in a kindergarten classroom, and I would sit with them or work with them because
Mhm.
I loved working with kids. I enjoyed making their day better. And that's a philosophy that's carried throughout. I always want to leave people better after they've worked with me than when they've had to come to me. So if people have to come to me with questions, whether it's students, whether it's educators, whether it's parents, my hope is that when they leave our conversation, that they feel better and better is a very relative term to people, but I hope they feel either inspired or anxieties are reduced or they've learned something along the way. And in turn, I've learned something along the way about building relationships and capacity within others.
So you started off talking a little bit about being an educator. You also do ghostwriting. You said, what does that
So
entail?
I create material that supports teachers,
Okay,
and I have the ability to work with many teachers using that voice and platform.
wonderful. And you do some work on this, right? You have a whole site, Lisa in Print.
So
And I'm
this
gonna
is a,
I'm
yep.
gonna and I'm gonna throw the website down below. It's just a short link, but make sure to check that out as well. So tell us what that is.
So this is a work in progress. I had an idea. I wrote a story down in a very short amount of time, but I felt that there was something to it. It came from the heart, it came with passion and conviction, and it got picked up really fast by our friends over at Codebreaker. So we're starting this journey. We're rocking and rolling. So we have the site up. It's
Great.
again, it's a work in progress. We have a story that's almost ready to go. We're working on illustrations right now, but really looking forward to see where this journey takes me.
Awesome. So what do you think about when you were talking about you were a shy kid and you had all these kind of steps to your journey and then you see this? How does
It's
that make you feel?
I it's
Besides that your hair looks great, you have nice manicure. Besides that.
right. I feel really pulled together in that picture. Um, it's so exciting. It's inspiring because that's not the journey that I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get to that point. There was
Mhm.
days I've cried at the kitchen table doing homework. But I think that's what makes myself and other educators who've gone through those types of personal journeys so effective because we can be
Okay.
so empathetic with our students. We weren't the people who had A plus in every subject,
Okay.
right? And we have the ability to empathize with our students and work with them. And we learned along the way, and then we got to where we needed to go with the help of incredible educators.
Yeah,
And
and you
being able to reach kids at a variety of levels is a passion of mine, and that's the idea behind the book.
and it's dig deeper into that idea of the book because you work a lot with students with high level of needs or students who have a large learning gap. So talk about that a little bit more. The need for this book, number one, and your passion behind it.
So I've worked with children in a variety of capacities, severe autistic children, children who are nonverbal, who use augmentative communication, students with learning disabilities and other learning challenges. And that's where this book um, came from. So more recently, my more recent experience was working with children with severe learning language disabilities.
Okay.
And these children are not your 4 and 5 year olds sitting on the carpet in kindergarten. These are your older students who are still lacking those foundational skills. So when I wanted to share an oral reading piece about their journey, it was really hard to find something in print that I could share orally that captured images of students like themselves. So I wrote a story that talks about their learning journey, talks about the strategies loosely, but talks about their strategies and how that assists them in growing throughout the course of an entire school year. It's not the idea of you teach a single lesson and now you're proficient and it's magic. No, it's the hard
Right.
work, it's the scaffolding, it's that day to day practice. It's that day to day hard work. It's that educator building those high expectations, assessments, the feedback. That's where we see the growth. So I was really mindful in the book also to show the continuum of a journey from the fall all the way to the spring. And then the images reflected, although it could be beneficial for our younger learners to have this book read to them, the images will also demonstrate children who are older, who we see in our small groups. In Ontario, we have um, special education resource rooms that
Hmm.
focus on math and language, that have 6 students, sometimes up to 8, sometimes 4, just depending on where you're at. And they work with educators, and they could be your students in grade 7, in grade 8, sometimes even in high school. And they're not captured in our storybooks learning to read. And I wanted that to be captured. So that's where the idea came from.
And being an elementary school previously principal, and hearing when you talk about the images, and how do you think, that's going to resonate with some of the older students? I haven't worked with that population, and I've been a district leader where I oversee curriculum at the high school, but I've never worked in that capacity. How is that going to resonate, or what's your goal for having these images for the older students?
I hope that students can see themselves in the print and they feel a sense of ease knowing that they're not alone. When we find our students in these smaller classrooms, sometimes they have difficulties connecting in our larger schools with peers that are not in a smaller classrooms of 25, 30, able to access timetables independently, able to access lockers independently without support. And I wanted them to be able to find a place and know that they're not alone, know that they are heard,
Okay.
that they are respected, and know that they are worthy enough to see themselves within print. And that's value. And when we have our students reflected in that, we are then setting our students up for that high expectations, knowing that we see them, and hopefully they understand that we respect them on their journey as well.
And how far along are you in the process?
The book took a very short time to write. Again, when
So
I
it's completed at this point.
I wrote the book in a very short time. Yeah, I had a
Okay.
thought, and I was watching my own. I have two children of my own, and I was at her rock climbing, and I literally typed it to myself on my cell phone, texted it to myself,
Wow,
and
that's exciting.
just when you have those ideas and things click, and you have people asking questions about literacy in a professional way, in a personal way, you run into educators everywhere you go. It's like you have a big educator sign on your face. Sometimes they just know, and I just felt like something was missing. So it was a very short time it took to write. Now the legwork comes with the illustrations and ensuring that they truly capture the story. And that's the piece that we're working on right now. So it just takes time for illustrations. I'm not an illustrator. That's
Okay.
not my strength. So I'm just working with a really great friend right now. And he is very strong in his journey as well. So it's just going to take some time, but the story itself is written.
Wonderful. Does it have a title?
It's called The Reading Seed.
Oh, wow. So tell me about why that's the title.
That's foundation. So we're talking about soil. We're building our kids up from September and hopefully watch them bloom by the springtime. It doesn't happen overnight, just like, and we all bloom at different times as well. So kind of going with that sentiment as well.
So, just going off of that and being like I said, I was an elementary school teacher and then a principal. One of the struggles that I had, and it was kind of both an internal and also talking with our foundational teachers. So I'd love to hear your thoughts that what you just said, where everybody kind of blooms at a different time, except we give a baseline assessment, middle of the year assessment, end of year assessment. How can we encourage our teachers to have that confidence in themselves that students will bloom over time, that just because in the beginning they're not, to not get down on themselves? Like, how would you support teachers to say it takes time?
So I think it has to. So I personally reflect on my own personal journey and that it did take time for me. And then once I bloomed, I was ready to go and shut up like a sunflower. So I think it's important that we as educators focus on our own journey and focus on our own struggles and think back to when we ourselves felt that we experienced some sort of challenge. Many of our educators are proficient. That's why they are educators. But there are points of their life where things were not as easy for them as maybe other people. And it's really important to reflect on that. And not that they were never able to do the task or the skill or the hobby or whatever it was, but maybe it took a little bit longer. There's no way that we are the first 100%
Hmm.
of the time. So I think reflecting in an area of our own challenge or a journey that took a little bit of time is a great way to start that reflection on empathy towards our students. I think it's important to lay that groundwork. You want to have high expectations for your learners. I will be here to support you always, but we're all going to be going through this a little bit differently, and that is okay. But I still have these expectations for you because I know you can, and I believe you can. And if you can't believe you can, I'll believe it for you until we get there together.
I
So I
like it.
think so just really laying that out, you're not giving them an out, but you're letting them know that you respect the journey that they're on. That is also really, really important. I really appreciate the benchmarks that happen at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. If you have students who are really lagging and are significantly below grade level expectation, if possible, feasible, depending on staff availability, progress monitoring that takes place a little more frequently can also support those little gains and celebrate those little gains. Because sometimes if we have assessments that take place in the beginning, middle, and end, you don't see necessarily the growth with those who are having those challenges. But if you have progress monitoring, you can say, you know what, you read 2 more words than you did last month, or you decoded this so much more consistently than this. So providing little bits of positive feedback can also help elevate them, their own self-esteem, and show them that they are on the right path. It's going to take a little longer, and that's okay.
Oh, I like it. Now, one of the things when you think about the scope of education and all the work that's out there, and now you're adding another book to the mix. Why do schools need this book?
Again, I feel that when we have our learners who are not proficient, they don't have the fluency. And again, we're getting our students, these are students who are 12, 13, 14, even a little bit younger, but in those junior intermediate grades,
Hmm.
they're no longer captured in print. We see them, their stories being told in chapter books, but chapter books are not accessible to all of our learners. So to be able to have a book that can be shared to them in one of those small group supportive classrooms or shared through professional development to remind our educators, some of our learners are still on this foundational journey. It really allows that to be accessible for all. That's my hope, is so it's accessible for all. And I really hope I can capture enough of people within this book that they feel that they can connect. And this book, yes, it would be great for educators, especially our special educators, to take a look at, but it's good for all of our educators to remind ourselves about that foundational groundwork that must be laid. But if it hasn't been laid yet, and if it hasn't been consolidated by our older learners, that's okay. We still have time, and we still need to work on getting them there. And they can do it, but as the book will explain, it just may take a little bit longer as we see that path through the whole school year.
So one of the things I ask, the last question I ask all of our guests, what does stronger together mean to you?
Cannot work in isolation. We've done the isolation piece, and you know what? We need to be together, not just physically together, but we need to be collaborative partners. We need to be collaborative partners on even just example building this book. It can't just be just me. I mean, we have Codebreaker here. We have my illustrator involved, Paul. We have you inviting me here, part of this podcast.
Mhm.
We are a community. We have to support one another. We have to. It's imperative. How can we expect our learners to work together, work in a group, problem solve outside in the yard, if we ourselves as educators are not being collaborative within our classrooms, within our schools? We need to share our resources, share our ideas. We have a lot of outside external noise. We need to focus on all that goodness that we have within. And there's a lot of goodness within, and you don't have to look too far to find it.
Well, that is amazing. So we'll definitely end on that. Looking at the goodness, hearing your great story and your great journey. Make sure to follow Lisa right here on Twitter and all the great things that are going to be coming your way. And please let us know when the book is out and ready, and we'll do everything
Oh,
we
I
can
will.
to
I'm so
promote it
excited.
and share. So thank you so much. Continue to do all the great work, and we look forward to seeing your success
Thank
as
you.
you
Thank
go
you
forward.
so much. All right, take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Yeah.